Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Dicebreaker, where I'm joined by our editor-in-chief, Matt Jarvis, who has been
Hello,
out
Wales.
reporting, Matt, on the
Yep.
biggest scoop of the week,
The man
which
on the
is...
ground in the mortal realms. I've been playing a bit of... the full title is Warhammer, Age of Sigmar, Realms of Ruin, which is the new RTS coming up sometime in the future. It doesn't actually have a release date yet, but at the time of recording this, and hopefully the time you're watching this, it's about to do an open beta in early July. And I played a bit of it before that open beta. So we are now
invite to a little
this
press
gameplay.
event to play against some devs and some other press. For those who are not in the know, who have maybe not tried it before, there is a very, very popular RTS series called Dawn of War. It's gotten less popular recently, I'll say. I don't know if the third one really hit very well, but
There's a great 2 games in that series. No need to mention anything more.
But it is, yeah, it's a StarCraft style Warhammer RTS, and this is the first iteration of Age of Sigmar. Do you know what the dev that put this out is?
Yeah, this is Frontier Developments, so they
Frontier,
are not
okay.
the Dawn of War folks. They are the
Dawn of War is Relic.
Yeah, they're the folks who did things like Elite Dangerous. I think they've also worked on a Warhammer 40,000 game, although they weren't like the main developer. They worked with Complex Games. I think it's called like Demon Hunters, something like that. So yes, this is kind of new for them. They're not necessarily known for RTS games, but I will say, spoilers as we watch me play through this, I really enjoyed my time with this.
Yeah, this is going to be like a little impressions / gameplay, right?
Yeah. So to pull back the curtain a little bit, we're not allowed to upload this gameplay without us chatting over the top. So this is all pre-recorded. This is kind of edited together from what I played during the event. And then Wills and I are just watching it through. So I was there at the time. Wills, you are kind of the Warhammer expert, I guess, along with Maddie on the team.
Yeah.
I know a bit of Warhammer, but I'm mainly coming at this from, I like Warhammer, but I'm more familiar with RTS stuff.
Yes, yeah, no, we are literally split down the middle because I don't play a whole lot of RTSs. You don't play a whole lot of miniature wargaming, as far as I'm aware. So we've basically split the difference. But yeah, I'm kind of interested in this because I like Age of Sigmar. I think it's cool and fun. I don't like Stormcast, which is what we're watching right now. This is a mirror match, I think, as he said. So this is Stormcast v Stormcast. Matt mentioned that this is going to be edited gameplay, but we've literally... This is raw, start to finish on 2 games.
Yeah, it's 2 back-to-back games. So the only bits we've edited out were like another game that I played, where, to be honest, I was learning and I was against the dev, and they were very kind to me because I didn't build units the first time I played this. That was totally on me, not on the game.
Yeah, what Matt has done is basically asked me to edit out all the bits where he didn't play well, and just cut in the bits where he played really well. So
you will see, I absolutely, to spoil the outcome of these games, I crush my opponents.
He was like, Wheels, we need to assert dominance. Only put this footage in.
Yeah, but the reason I asked you to basically come down to these 2 games is you'll see Stormcast Eternals in this first game, and then you'll see the other playable faction, the beta and this preview, which are the Orruk Warclans.
Yeah.
So in the final game, there will be 4 playable factions, but at the moment they've only revealed 2, which are the Stormcast and the Orruks. So yeah, you'll see it from one perspective, and then you'll see it from the other. So yeah. The other stuff that I did during that preview was I played I think probably the first single-player mission, which was very much like a tutorial. So it's kind of like, here's how you move your units, here's how you use their abilities, here's how you capture a point. So that we don't have footage of. We only have footage of the multiplayer games, which, from my understanding, is what the open beta will include. That's running in July. You'll be able to play this if you're watching this ahead of the open beta.
So I will use my Warhammer knowledge here. So the 4 base factions I would hazard a guess at, because there are sort of, in Age of Sigmar, 4 grand alliances, which is Order, Chaos, Death, and Destruction.
I was going to say Chaos is the thing that I feel was missing. From my limited understanding of Warhammer, it's like there should be a Chaos thing, and there's probably going to be like a Skaven-y thing?
No, so I would assume that it would be Nighthaunt, because that's one of their big...
Undead, okay.
Yeah, that's their big sort of death poster boy faction, and then I would assume some kind of like Chaos, like, Chaos United or whatever, like a sort of generic Chaos army, rather than going for like a specific demon or anything like that. yeah, the sort of gameplay of Age of Sigmar allows you, because it used to be quite sort of, I am playing the dwarves or I am playing the orcs, but now it's kind of pick an alliance and you can kind of just shove whatever you want from that alliance in one army. So if you're playing Order, you could have some dwarves, some Sigmarines, some human cities people, all that kind of stuff. So I would assume they've probably got one faction from each of those if they're going with full launch factions. Nighthorn are like one of the sort of like starter set factions from the previous iteration of the game. So interestingly, what we're watching now is what the exact two factions you would play as if you currently bought an Age of Sigmar starter box.
Yeah, Dominion, right? Is
Exactly.
the box.
Yeah, we have a let's play of it on the channel if you're interested. But yeah, no. So this is Order versus Destruction. Well, sorry. In this one, it's Order versus Order because we've got 2 mirror matches. But the current playable factions as you play the open beta will be Order versus Destruction. So I would assume that the Chaos and Death are probably coming, but that is all speculation.
That would make sense. Yeah, we don't know anything. Like Frontier haven't announced anything, so yes, we are literally just guessing at that. But that would make sense. So to give you an idea of how this game works, as we watch this gameplay play out, so if you're familiar with RTS games, real-time strategy games like StarCraft or Age of Empires, you might have played Red Alert. The gameplay is along those lines, but it is, I suppose, like a more modern iteration of that genre. So you're not necessarily building a base. You'll see that I have this kind of like tent HQ thing here at one end of the map, and then my opponent has their respective HQ at the other. Oh, thank you, past me, for selecting that. So yeah, the muster point is kind of your base, and then there are these command points scattered around the map, and they come in kind of 2 flavors. So there are the stars on the minimap, or like little target things. Those are, I think they're called like ether points, something like that. Basically, those, when you capture them and then build on them, so you can build a building on them, you can then get what's known as Realm Stone, I think. So that is the middle resource in the top left that I currently have about 500 of. That is
swirly
used for,
orange and yellow.
Yeah, that's used for upgrading my muster point, as I just did. That was very convenient. It's almost like I planned it. So when you upgrade your muster point, you then get more advanced units, and you can also build more units, so it increases your population cap. You can see here, I'm building on these outpost siphons. I built quite a lot of those over the course of this game, because they just basically give me more Realm Stone.
Right, yeah, so those are your sort of resource gatherers, so yeah. Unlike a sort of classic RTS where you've got little dudes walking around mining stone for you or whatever, you're kind of just like sucking them out of these little control points.
Exactly, yeah, and as you can see here from me attacking the opponents, when you've built on a point, you then have to destroy it before you can claim it. I think this might be where I get overrun a little bit. I do fight back a little bit here. So yeah, Realm Stone is largely used for, I think, it's used for upgrading your muster point. It's also used for activating each unit's abilities, which is a big part of this game.
Okay.
So compared to other RTS games, where you kind of might just like amass a massive army of like dozens and dozens of units, something like StarCraft or something like Age of Empires or Red Alert, here I think the maximum cap you get to is like 16 units. And
You've got
those
11
are squads,
at the top left at the moment.
Yeah, so I've upgraded the first kind of jump. And then I think the second upgrade for the muster point to the 3rd level takes you to 16 total. And you'll see like those squads include multiple units within each squad, but it's very much built around kind of like a low number of squads that you then use to fight over these points. But what is important about those squads is they each have a unique ability. And those abilities, there is a separate kind of tech tree that you can upgrade. You'll notice that there's kind of like a hero character here, the Knight Vexilor even, who has the ability to, I think the Knight of Vexilor has the ability to buff and heal people. At some point you'll see it pop up kind of down the bottom while I'm selecting units that they will have specific abilities depending on what they are.
Yeah, I've kind of played with Stormcast Eternals on tabletop, so I can see like you've got like your kind of priesty dude who's kind of shooting.
So here at the moment, just to jump in, you can see the tier 1 and tier 2 upgrades. Those are kind of passive abilities and active abilities.
Yeah.
That I'm unlocking. So you can see Sigmar's Aegis in the bottom left. I think that's like a protective buff that comes from particular Stormcast. So yeah, this game is very much around using low number of squads to fight with these command points, and because those abilities cost Realm Stone, which is what you also use to upgrade and buy more kind of powerful units, you want to choose when you're using them. So one of the things I did in my early games was I was kind of burning through Realmstone really quickly because I was just popping off abilities left, right, and center. And that then meant that I didn't really upgrade anything. And that was a mistake, let me tell you. Because then I didn't have many units, they weren't very powerful, and I wasn't able to build any more powerful units. So yeah, you kind of want to choose when those abilities are worth popping off and when it's better to save up for these new kind of upgrades. You can also see as I'm buying units, they are kind of exiting from the gate at the end of the map. And same with my opponents, you can see that their gate on the mini-map is in the top right. So yeah, all of your units come from there. Again, you don't have like a barracks, you can't spawn them closer to your opponent. They always come from the end of the map. So in some ways, it's kind of got a bit of that like MOBA-esque feel.
I was going to say it does, like, you can,
with mobs.
obviously on this map we've got like a 3-lane setup, so it makes it very reminiscent of like League of Legends or something like that. But it does have that kind of feel of like, you know, moving up the map, capturing points.
Yeah.
To be fair, like if we're going to compare it to its contemporary, which is obviously Dawn of War, like that had a very similar mechanic, right? Where you were capturing your control points, and then those control points would give you the resources that you need to do a lot of things. So I do think that there's like a sort of precedent if that's kind of the audience that they're trying to capture.
Yeah. It's very Dawn of War 2, so particularly like Dawn of War 1 was kind of more traditional RTS where you did build stuff.
Yeah.
Dawn of War 2 lent much more into that kind of like light RPG feel, where it's more
Yes.
about the characters and their abilities. So yeah, this definitely reminded me of that. And if you go and read the preview on the website, which should be live as of this video going up, that is the kind of key comparison I make, not least because I'm very familiar with Dawn of War 2, but also that's what it really put me in mind of.
I will say I love the animations so far. Like they've got a lot of like seeing that guy jump over the little ballista and like grab it with his shoulder and stuff. Like it's very fluid and not very kind of. I feel like with RTS games a lot of the time they just kind of like run around, stand still, and fire in a straight line. But
Yeah.
it feels almost kind of like Total War, like the way that they're kind of like sliding into each other and, you know, like setting up little battle lines and things like that. Seeing the the shot lines and stuff.
It looks great, and so again, you're not seeing the single player campaign here, but there are cutscenes, and I think the cutscenes, you know, given that these are like models largely designed to be viewed from overhead, like small little people on a tabletop almost, but the cutscenes look sharp, you know, like so the single player campaign follows Sigrun. She is the leader of like a group of Stormcast Eternals.
I'm
Basically,
looking at a painted model of her at the moment.
Yes, so they are fighting in the realm of Gur.
which is like the beast realm, right?
Like swampy, swampy beast realm.
The just as like
follows her as well.
a little bit for people who are not familiar with Age of Sigmar, it is like whilst it uses a lot of the models from traditional Warhammer Fantasy, it's very different lore-wise. This is like set in a world after the original world blew up, and then like Sigmar flew around and some dragons took him into a realm or some crap. So basically, this is like 9 different planes kind of that all have their own. So there's like a death realm. This is the beast realm where it's all kind of wild and untamed. There's like a realm of order, which is where all the Sigmar guys are at. So they're basically kind of like breaching through these gates and taking territory in these kind of weird twisted worlds. So this is why we're in this kind of like very bone stricken and like swampy territory.
Yeah, and like you say, it looks really good. Like it's really easy to read in terms of what's going on. I found. You can see me just like trotting my Vexillor over now. So I haven't actually explained how you win. So you can see the the bars at the top of the screen. Currently, my opponent's is on about 180. Mine's on 660. By holding the other command points, which I didn't explain earlier, which are they're
Squares.
kind of like diamonds marked
Yeah.
with 1, 2, and 3. So I think those are called literal command points. I might be getting the terminology completely wrong, but basically by holding those, you don't build anything on them. But those are what you can see at the top of the screen. There's like 1, 2, and 3. They're currently all gold because I'm holding them. They are what then depletes your opponent's points. So
Yeah.
once you hit 0, you lose. So if you make
Kind of
your
like
opponent
health.
hit 0 before you, yeah, you know, so rather than like destroying their buildings or destroying their units, that doesn't really matter.
That was
Yeah,
sick.
so that's the Stormdrake. So that's the Stormdrake's fire breath move, which just demolished most of my troops there. Yeah, the Stormdrake's really cool. So that is a tier 3 build. So there are mounts in terms of you can't dismount from them. But the Stormcast Eternals get the Stormdrake. You can also see I'm building like a Ballistia at the moment. Like a walking ballista thing. And then the Orruks, which we'll see in the next game, they get Troggoths, I think they're called, like the big
Yes.
trolls.
Yeah.
And some walkie thing that I can't remember the name of. Slogoths, maybe? Marshcrawler Slogoths.
Is it like a four-legged...
Yeah, and it's got like a load of Orruks sat on the back of it.
Yes,
and they
yeah,
fire
I think
from
that's.
it.
I
It's
think
cool.
it's called a
It
Slugger.
looks real messed up.
I love the new Orc models. They're
Yeah.
really, really fun. With their like red squig shields, they're really fun. But the I was just going to ask. So the control points. Is it a case of having the majority? So like, is he losing health now because you've got 2 to his 1?
Yes, yeah. So you can see that they've taken back one.
I love that you
So
immediately bought a Stormdrake after seeing that.
yeah, I was like, I want one of those.
I want to do a flame breath.
So yeah, you can see that my points still aren't ticking down despite having lost a command point. So it's the majority, and if you hold all 3, it goes down a lot quicker. Basically.
Yes, yeah. Hence why
But
his
yeah.
health got absolutely tanked in the past kind of minute
Exactly.
or so.
Yeah, and so an important thing about the kind of combat of this is that despite there being different units and having a lot of different abilities, which are obviously kind of crux to pulling ahead of your opponent, it kind of breaks down to a fairly simple rock paper scissors thing. So there are 3 different types of units. There are, I think, assault units, which are represented by a sword. There are heavy units, which have the shield, and then there are ranged units. And so it kind of works in like a combat triangle of assault is really good against, I think, ranged. Heavy
Yeah.
is good against assault, and then ranged are good against heavy because heavy moves slow, and
Yeah,
therefore they can do a lot of damage.
It's pretty standard strategy fare. You will be used to this from either To War or Fire Emblem or like whatever it is that you've played.
Yeah. So then you obviously get like the bigger units who are just like souped up versions of that, and then there are hero units who are marked with a kind of star, and they have a unique place in that triangle, where they might be one of those, but they are also like they have a unique kind of dynamic amongst those, and normally they're more built around those abilities. So yeah, you can see my Stormdrake now flying over. Yeah, and you can see this, I think, is the fully upgraded Stormcast Eternals offering, which I didn't pop up for very long. But yeah, now I'm just squatting on these 2 points because I know that should win me the game. I don't really need to push for that third one.
So when it comes to the sort of upgrades, because we were talking about, you know, kind of like individual upgrades for troops, is that like a faction-wide buff that you're giving to them, or are you individually grabbing a squad and hitting upgrade on them? Because I know
those are they're faction-wide. So normally, I think in the tech tree, there's normally like, for instance, for your range units, it might be one of 2 different things, and picking one might lock out the other. It's not always the way. You can see the prosecutors here taking flight. Yes, Age of Mythology, great game.
What game?
But yeah, you can see the prosecutors there taking flight. So with flying units, you can see there with the Stormdrake actually, there is the choice to fly them as an ability. Oh man, get gone. So yeah, the ranged ballista there took down that Stormdrake very easily.
Little lore explainer there for people. You saw that Stormdrake just zapped into a pile of lightning and flew off. That's not just because they want to hide corpses. That is actually what Stormcast do, because they're just like one soul that gets shoved into a new body every now and again. Which is why
my Stormdrake crashed down here. Just
yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
and the flame breath.
and then the
in.
fire breath coming in.
Oof.
Yeah.
Good
it's
lord.
Real mean. So yeah, and that's the thing. So chatting with the devs, like it is, although it's obviously not turn-based, it's not built around dice rolls. It does seem to be really faithful from at least my fairly limited understanding.
Feels like it, yeah. Like just from looking at it, you know, it's you're holding objective points, you're moving in. Like it's obviously you're not spawning new units on the tabletop. You're kind of just coming with everything already set up. But
yeah,
it does very much feel like that.
Arcane Conduits is the thing that gives you Realmstone. So yes. And so here we've got Orruks versus Orruks. So it's the Orruk Crawl Boys.
Yes.
So another mirror match. So you'll see the differences here. So it's very similar in terms of, again, you've got squads. They're built around those kind of straightforward, like heavy assault range stuff. Like the general gameplay doesn't differ massively, but where it changes is those abilities. So you can see kind of here my killer boss has all part of the plan, which does certain stuff. And yeah, these gut rippers have scare tactics. So they all do different things. They're either buffs or debuffs, or you know, it might boost your attack, it might heal units around you, it might like debuff opponent units. A lot of units also have charge, which you'll see in the the bottom left. So that uses command points, which is the blue. So command points is the other key resource. So there's Realmstone, which is the red.
Which is
command points,
what you're also using to buy these squads by the looks of things, right?
Yeah, so more expensive units will cost both, but
Right.
your kind of basic units at the start will cost just command points.
Yeah.
But so charging is available to like a number of different units, and that literally, you'll see me use it occasionally. If you're not engaged in combat, you can press it and you will, as it sounds like, you will run into combat along like it's like a fixed, like straight line.
Yeah, grab yourself like a little temporary bonus, I'm guessing.
Yeah, then when you're in combat, it will change to retreat, and retreat is really interesting. So if you hit retreat, which I did by accident a couple of times, so I was still getting used to it because I wasn't paying close enough attention to when units were engaged or not. You will then pull back that squad to I think it's all the way back to your muster point, but they will gain like a buff that means enemies don't necessarily attack them, or it's harder for them to hit. So basically, it can sometimes be a lot more valuable to pull back a unit because they can heal up at the muster point. The muster point allows you to heal units. So you can then just hit it and they will flee. You'll see it happen a few times. They'll get like a little effect above them a lot of the time. So you can see, unstoppable, there you go. So I'm pulling them back at the moment. Yeah, they're running.
Yeah, that's cool actually. I feel like that's a common thing I run into an RTS because obviously you're spinning a lot of plates when you're playing a real-time strategy game.
You are, yeah.
So sometimes you'll shove a unit up on the right-hand side, realize something's going on the left, and completely forget about them. You come back and you're like, oh crap, it's 4v1. A lot of the times I would just be like, right, well that unit is dead then, isn't it? Because like there's nothing I can do. So having like a little retreat action is kind of like a fun way of keeping things sort of even, because I feel like with RTS games, if you have like one big loss somewhere, it can really like domino.
Yeah, and especially here where, again, so I'm starting with just 6 units now. I've built all 6, so I can't actually build any more units till I upgrade my muster point. So, you know, keeping those 6 alive and using them carefully is really key. Oh yeah, this is the bit where I was just getting shot from over the cliff.
Not your killer boss.
Away. So yeah, and just in case people are wondering, you capture the points just by standing near them.
Yeah.
You only have to target them if there's a building on them, and then you have to destroy that in an enemy building before you can capture it. But you'll see the kind of circles around each point, and then each region on the map kind of has an associated kind of influence with it. So
you see on the mini map, right? These little sort of borders.
And as you capture things, that will shrink in.
Right.
And I think there might be a connection between the size of the region and how long it takes to catch something, but I'm not entirely sure.
Is there
just be a visual effect?
Are you getting any kind of buff for being in that region, or is it just like a sort of...
I don't know, to be honest. It might be that there are certain things related with that, but I can't tell you for sure. It might be that's something related to other factions or abilities, but I don't know. Oh yeah, so they're now running away, so you can see they've got unstoppable, and my unit's kind of like disengaged with them.
Yeah, it's cool. It's interesting. I like that. Does that cost command points to do?
I don't think so. I think charging does, retreating doesn't, because I think you obviously are losing them out of the battle, like having to pull them back. So that's kind of the downside. But I'm not entirely sure. When I'm engaged in a fight, I will keep an eye out. So yeah, you can see some of these popping up, and kind of it explains what they do at the side. Normally, units only have a couple of abilities tops, so it's not loads and loads to think about. And normally, when you're upgrading them, it's either like buffing the existing abilities or kind of adding 1 or 2 more.
So,
there's not loads.
Obviously, you only play 2 of the factions that are going to be in the base game, so you've got sort of limited scope on this. But like, how different does it feel to switch between Stormcast and Orruks?
So, like I say, gameplay-wise, it didn't feel that different. It was definitely... So I played a lot of the Stormcast because that was what the single-player campaign focuses on.
Yeah.
I played my first match against a dev as Stormcast. They recommended playing the first 2 multiplayer matches as the same. So this is the first time I'm playing Orruks, basically.
Yeah.
So I'm probably not using my abilities as effectively. But it feels like those abilities are notably different. So... Whereas the Stormcast hero, the Vexilor, was built around kind of buffing units and healing. You can see here, my killer boss has like a good area of effect attack that knocks the enemies back. So it's built more around charging in, being part of the fray, whereas the Vexillor was more kind of support character.
Yeah,
And I think there are a bunch of like Orruks who have things like poison, which the Stormcast don't get, so they do kind of damage over time and that kind of thing.
I mean, obviously you can see that they've got little hobgoblin guys as well, which are kind of more of a swarmy unit, sort of like cannon fodder, rather than the very, very concentrated, maybe like 3 or 4 guys that you would get with a Stormcast unit.
Yeah.
Seeing
So, you can see on the tech tree as it pops up, there are like little bounding boxes around some of the neighbouring abilities. So I think that's if you choose one, you won't get the other kind of thing.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I'm seeing like a sort of like potential problem the game could have, where it's like I feel like one of the fun things about RTSs is how different it feels to play each of those factions. So I'm wondering how they'll kind of keep that differentiation up. Like, you know, how different is it to play, for example, the Nighthaunt when they're available? You know, how different is it to play the I don't know, the ogres or whatever it is that they end up introducing? Here's the Slog-Off coming in, which I'm pretty excited about.
The Marshmallow Slog-Off. So yeah, I think there were definitely like differences. So for instance, the Sigmarines, the Stormcast Eternals get flying units, whereas the Orruks don't.
Yeah.
And when you are flying, they can't engage with ground units, but so like you can't attack them. They can't necessarily attack you, I think, unless they're ranged. But it means that you can then do things like crash into the floor, as I did with that Storm Drake, and I think the oh god, is it the Evocators? Whatever. Oh no, it's the prosecutors, the flying Stormcast Eternals.
Yeah, the angel winged ones, basically.
Yeah, they do similar things where they do like a big ground smash.
Yeah.
So again, there is that dynamic in terms of that's quite different because the Orruks just don't have that. So there is like, how do you deal with flying Stormcast Eternals if you are the Orruks? But the Orruks then have things like the Troggoth, which will wade in and be like much more useful with big groups because it will knock them back and stun them. So I definitely did see some like variation, like the abilities do feel different. But yeah, I do wonder if these are the two factions they've put out first, because these are kind of maybe the most similar in the same way that they are that starter box, right? For the
yeah, it's maybe not too confusing to pick between them, kind of thing.
Yeah, because the single player campaign I played, I think you're controlling a group of Vanguard hunters. So their ability was to turn invisible.
Right.
So you can literally just straight up sneak up on enemies, which again feels very different to the Orruk kind of approach of just wade in, like swinging things around, like throwing units and all of that. So yeah, I've only played 3 multiplayer games. I played that single player mission, but it feels like the thing where there should be depth in that kind of contrast.
So do we know? So it like the units that you're playing with is that definitely like the kind of launch list of units? Because obviously you're mentioning ones in the single player campaign that I don't think we saw.
I don't know, to be honest. So I only know what I saw here. So yeah, it may be that there is more to come. From my understanding, like I was basically just told, hey, like this is the Stormcast and the Orruks, like it's 1v1 multiplayer beta. So yeah, like again, we're only seeing a kind of slice of this, and it might just be that I didn't build those units or I didn't spec them in a way that turns them into those units.
Yeah.
So I can't say for sure, to be honest. I don't want to assume either way. But you're seeing some things like here. So yeah, the Slog-Off there can fire nets and kind of stun enemies, which is very different again to like the Storm Drake, which just unleashes with fire.
Yeah, I'm wondering if maybe the Storm Drake is a little bit more glass cannony, because obviously that fire ability is absolutely devastating. But
I would guess so, and that's why it can fly, because it can then get out of there very quickly.
Yeah, because when it tried to face off your pretty hench-looking squad at the end of the last game, it was melting down. So
yeah,
maybe the Slog-Off is a little bit more tanky as well. Are you also? I was going to mention this earlier. Like looking at those skills that you've kind of got highlighted over. Are they giving you much information on what they do? Because it seems like they're just sort of like, here is the name of the thing. Do you want to click it or not?
Yeah, that was one thing I would say that I would have preferred would be a little bit easier in this. Is like, yeah, I was kind of just guessing. So whereas the abilities, like once you've once you've got them, you can see, like, if I press W here, it'll tell me what all part of the plan does.
Yeah.
But it was kind of hard to tell exactly what those abilities were going to do before I got them. It kind of gives you, like, okay, this is long searing gases. It's like, what does that mean? So yeah, I think that is the kind of thing where, as you play more and more, you'll get into like, okay, this does this particular thing, and there are little icons that give you a very rough idea of what they affect. But yeah, there's no explicit description. It's worth saying here as well. So I'm playing mouse and keyboard, as you can probably tell from watching my mouse was around. This is coming to consoles as well. So I think the beta is just PC. One of the things they have spoken about is their control scheme for consoles, which is called Direct Step, I think, which, you know, aims to do like an RTS style thing using a controller. I didn't use that, so I can't speak to like how that works or how good it felt. But for
Yeah,
those of you who don't play on PC, like, it is coming into consoles.
I think one of the sort of like points of derision that a lot of the like hardcore RTS gamers have is like trying to make a game that is manageable to play on a controller. It has an effect on what that final gameplay is, because we're looking at it, like you say, like, there's no base building. Like, it is kind of just sort of like you move out, you grab a point, you shove a thing on it. It gives you some more resources to put some more guys down. So it does feel like a sort of slightly kind of maybe more diluted experience of like a full RTS. And I wonder if that is because, you know, they're trying to get it on all platforms kind of thing. But there's also something to be said about the kind of like user-friendly kind of nature of the design as well, because I personally am very bad at real-time strategy games because I can't manage that many spinning plates all the time. So having something that's a little bit more like, okay, I'm moving my units around, I'm putting stuff down, and I've got some resources up top. Like, I can see kind of like just from watching this gameplay, looking at the mini-map, looking at the UI at the top, I kind of know what's happening at all times everywhere. Whereas I think in some RTSs it's like, oh geez, like I've got 4 different buildings that need upgrading and restocking, and oh god, whilst I've been doing that, all of my units have been dying on the left flank, etc., etc. So I think it might be like a nice kind of a bit more beginner-friendly RTS. People are kind of dipping their toes into the genre.
Yeah, I do genuinely think that. So yeah, I played like a lot of StarCraft in my youth, like, and that is kind of the other extreme end where it's all down to APM, like actions per minute. And this, obviously, it feels like it has the scope for that, because you are still controlling units and you want to trigger those abilities. You can see the penetrating shot here. Yeah, I used to stun them all from the Ballistia. Okay, so retreating costs 10 command points.
Yeah,
so
okay, cool.
But yeah, it does feel a lot easier to manage. And again, like that single player campaign, the one mission that I did teach me, like, okay, this is the turn invisible ability. So I wonder whether that campaign will give you a good kind of grounding in, here are what these abilities do, and here's how to use them, kind of thing. Because that first mission, it did that effectively. It was kind of like, yep, I know that I can turn invisible and sneak past this troll now. Good.
I think my question will be for the people who are maybe, for example, coming from something like Dawn of War, and they're big RTS gamers, like they've played this a lot. I think my biggest concern will be like replay value, because it seems like if there's not a huge amount of depth between sort of like the differences in the factions and how they play specifically, not just like the units they have and the stats or whatever, but like the ways in which they interact with the game systems that makes them different and makes them feel like playing a new faction. If there's not a huge difference between that, and there's also this kind of like we said, like more diluted gameplay that's a little bit more like MOBA-esque, kind of very like streamlined and, you know, like lane focused. I wonder what the kind of longevity will be for people who want to play this multiplayer over and over again, you know?
Yeah, and obviously I can't speak to that because I spent about an hour and a half, 2 hours with it. But I will say that after playing this, I was really keen to play more of it. So they're saying that matches generally will take about half an hour. These actually take about 15 minutes, as you can see, because I stomped through my opponents. So they're fairly short, you know, they're not an hour plus. They're not that kind of slow ramp up as you build buildings and units. So I think that will also help. It feels like this is a game that's being built for like folks who just want to jump in, like play a match maybe, and then
dip in and out.
Yeah, not necessarily have to commit an entire evening to it. Which again, like you say, I think a lot of these games will come down to that kind of the unit differentiation. But here I've got a Trogoff, like he's wandering out. Like
feels a little bit past the point.
Yeah, you'll see I start spinning the camera in a moment because I don't know what else to do. Because I built all my units and I've got the 2 points. So yeah, I think there is an element of that, but I was left super keen, like, to kind of play around. Like, here I was just guessing at, like, swamp-drenched, like, strings and venom-dipped bolts sound fun. I'll have those. But there are different, options. It feels like you could spec in different ways. So yeah, I think, like you say, part of it will come down to how long that lasts and how different that feels between these, but yeah. Like, even here, you can see this Trogoff is just, like, wading in, stunning people, like, knocking them back, which is very different to that Stormdrake.
Yes.
Just, like,
absolutely flying, yeah. Yeah, it's cool. It's interesting. I'm excited to get my hands on it. I think the big thing for me will be seeing the, what factions they've got, the ways in which they kind of differentiate from each other. I will point out as well, like, this is very much a beta. Like, you'll see a couple of textures being pulled across and things like that. It's early access. It's in development.
The beta that will be playable this weekend in July has already been patched from this version. But again, like, we came across some kind of very minor bugs, but nothing that was, like, super noticeable. Like, and it seemed, like, really polished, given that it doesn't currently have a release date and it's currently in open beta. Like, it seemed really good. And again, hopefully stuff like having tooltips for abilities, like, I would hope that will come in time.
Yeah, it looks really clean. It looks really well presented. I like, graphically, it looks lovely. Honestly, like, I think with RTS games, it's tricky to strike that balance between something that's, like, pretty but also readable, and then also, like, looks good but is also scalable, because obviously you've got to zoom right out and see everything going on. Especially
in Warhammer, where a lot of stuff is kind of like dark and brown. Basically, it's like it's mud. I think this looks nice. Like, there's color in there. You'll see me zoom in a second, I think, so you'll get a good look at the models up close. But yeah, like, I like the animations. Like, it, like you said earlier, like, they seem to have character. Like, the way that Trogoff is kind of stumbling around and this Marsh Crawler is kind of, like, doing stuff. Like, it feels like it's got a good grip on the Warhammer side of things. And then as an RTS, I had a good time with it. Like I say, I will probably jump into more of that open beta this weekend, because as I was playing, I was like, man, I want to play more of this with, like, I want to play against my friends who are also RTS folks, and it left me super positive about it. So yeah, my overall impression was, like, really positive coming out of it. Like, as a lapsed RTS player and a kind of, like, so Warhammer fan, here we go. Here's a close up look.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, this seems super cool. Like, I want to play more of this. It seems really well considered and put together. And it seems like the kind of RTS I might actually play because I'll have the time for it.
Yes.
And it's not so overwhelming that I need to play nothing but this RTS.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's looking cool. I'm excited to see more from it. Obviously, open beta coming, or closed beta, or open beta, was it?
Open beta from July 7th to the 10th, and then a release date, I think, TBC at the time of this recording.
Sweet, right. Well, if you've enjoyed this, if you've liked the look of what Matt's been looking at here, this is the new Age of Sigmar RTS, which will be available as that open beta, just as we said, very, very soon. But if you want to see more from us here on Dicebreaker, we are covering pretty much everything tabletop related. Obviously, this is a little dip our toes into the video game sphere, but we do tend to cover things that have that crossover. So Age of Sigmar is a video game. If you want to see more of us doing Age of Sigmar things, we have a full Let's Play of the starter set that this game is very clearly based on. We've also done a little how to play for the newest edition of Warhammer 40k here on youtube.com/Dicebreaker, so go on over to that. Give us a subscribe, give us a like, click the bell icons, get notified whenever we put a new video live. You can find more of Matt over on the website at Dicebreaker.com. He is our editor-in-chief, looking over all of the coverage that we give, whether it's news or reviews, interviews, previews, whatever you want. If it's got the word view on it, then he's probably writing it. So you can see more of him over there on Dicebreaker.com. Head on over to Dicebreaker.com/subscribe if you want to help the channel grow even further. It is our subscription service where you get loads of exclusive goodies. behind the scenes looks at things, exclusive content, videos and articles. You can also, if you're signed up for a year, you get discount on tickets to events like PAX Unplugged, and also a free board game. So thank you very much for watching. We will see you on the next one. But until then, have a lovely day. Goodbye.
Bye.